We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the May 26th, 2026 study session of the University City Council to order. Before I turn the program over to Ms. Sharp, are there any changes to the regular agenda this evening? Hearing none. Ms. Sharp.
Honorable Mayor Crow, members of the City Council, I would like to call forward Chief Larry Hampton. He will introduce the flock team that has a presentation for you all tonight that will hopefully answer some of your questions. And of course, they will save time at the end to take any questions you all may have. Chief, if you would come forward.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Crow, members of the council, City Manager Sharp, and City Attorney Mulligan. I've been working for quite some time with the flock representatives that are here tonight. And so basically to answer a lot of Q&As and to give you a lot of details and information more specific than the knowledge that I have on it, I did invite them for this study session as directed. And Miss Holly, Miss Melissa, and Miss Elaine will be answering any of your concerns for tonight. So I will briefly turn this over to them so we can maximize our time frame for this. Thank you.
Green light on. I am much shorter than Chief, so I'm going to do this.
And if you could just give us your name and corporate address, then we'll move forward from there.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Holly. I work with Flock. I've worked there for almost 6 years now, and I'm on our public affairs team. And first of all, I just want to set the stage by thanking y'all, mayor and council members, for letting us be here today and answer questions. I know there are a lot of really good questions in the room, and we appreciate you even just letting us, provide answers to that and provide the presentation. I'm also going to level set that I know y'all know kind of the basics of flock safety. So while I do have a presentation, I do really want to get to your questions. So I'll go relatively quickly through the presentation, if that's okay. If I can skip the slides. I did it. Okay, so this is a little bit just about flock safety in general. As a company, we have about 12,000 customers. We are only in the US, so that's across the contiguous US. And about half of those are cities and counties, so public entities like University City. The other half of them are private entities. So we work with HOAs, we work with local small businesses. We also work with big box retailers and with large hospital systems. So it just really runs the gamut. About 2,800 crimes are solved every day using Flock, and that represents roughly, the estimates are, difficult to exactly ascertain, but 10 to 20% of all reported crime in the US, flock safety is touching those in some way. And in addition, we work with about 1,500 businesses, like I mentioned. So we're going to talk about two different technologies today. We're going to talk about LPRs, or license plate readers, and then skipping ahead a little, we'll talk about audio detection, but let's start with license plate readers. So just to level set with how these are different from your traditional surveillance security cameras, license plate readers take still images. So they're fixed cameras on a pole on the side of a road, taking images of the back of vehicles, specifically focusing on the license plates. They then software on the cameras compare those license plates in near real time, in just a couple of seconds, with different state and national crime databases. So the one that everyone knows about is the Amber Alert database, right? Everyone gets those alerts to their phone. Our software actually integrates with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which maintains that Amber Alert database. And so if a vehicle associated with a missing child, a kidnapped child, passes one of those cameras, it alerts your local law enforcement, University City Police, in, like I said, near real time, just a couple of seconds. And it's able to do that via a couple different methods. Law enforcement officers can get an email. They can get that alert via a mobile app. So if they're moving around and actually patrolling, or they can get it on the MDT on their patrol car. So basically in real time, and they can then determine, okay, that vehicle passed this camera just now. The direction of travel is going in this way, and they get that picture of the vehicle. So they can hopefully apprehend, and in that case, hopefully recover that missing child. Now, some of the other databases it connects with are the National Crime Information Center, NCIC, which is a database maintained by the Department of Justice that's known stolen vehicles and vehicles associated with known wanted offenders, which might be from a variety of violent and property crimes, vehicles associated with those offenders. And then some states have state-specific lists. And then your university police department, University City Police Department, can also build their own hot list of vehicles that are known to be wanted by them. So that's how kind of that alert system works. And you can see an example of it on the screen. Now, the cameras are also really useful for investigative use cases. So we talked about the proactive alerting. Let's say, though, that a hit and run happened and the crime obviously was not reported until a few hours later because the person had to call police, identify, the hit and run, if they need to send an ambulance, whatever. So in that case, a detective who knows where the hit and run occurred, the cross streets that it occurred, what time it occurred, and maybe the victim remembers it was a white Jeep with a roof rack that hit me, but they weren't able to remember the entire license plate, right? Because they were just hit by a car. Well, the software can actually use those vehicle signature characteristics to help that detective search for that vehicle. So they can actually go into the system, identify the camera that was near that hit and run that occurred, and search for things like white Jeep with roof rack. There are parameters on that search. They can only search for certain characteristics, but they can do that vehicle signature search to hopefully narrow in on the white Jeep that was in that area at the time, get the license plate of that Jeep from the image, and then follow up and hopefully solve and close that case. So it's really important when we talk about these LPRs, they are really designed with privacy in mind. This is actually a founding principle of our company. Flock didn't invent license plate readers. They've existed for decades. What we did is we innovated on the business model. We innovated on the technology so that smaller police departments in suburbs and rural communities, all the way to now many big cities, can actually use the technology. It's cheaper and it's easier to deploy. But we also built it with privacy as a fundamental principle. So we were the first vendor to institute by default, short data retention periods. So that's by default, we only retain the data for 30 days. We think that's a good balance of time between having enough investigative data so that if a detective doesn't get that hit and run case until a few days after it happens, she's actually able to go back in the system and search for the vehicles that are known to be involved in that case, but also not retain data for months or even years. We don't think that that's necessary. So that the privacy is really a fundamental principle. The other thing that's really important that I want to emphasize here is local control and ownership of the data. So if you look at our terms and conditions, it explicitly dictates that our customers own the data. They own the images, they own the associated metadata. That's really important to us because what it means is that we can never sell it, and we can never share it without customer permission to any other third parties. Now, University City Police Department can choose to share it with nearby agencies in order to help solve cross-jurisdictional crime, but that is up to the customer. They can change that at any time. They can revoke those permissions at any time. That is completely within local control. We also were the first vendor to offer an LPR transparency portal, and this is optional, but it is completely free to any agency that chooses to turn it on. And I actually, I wanted to adjust this presentation right before, but it was already loaded into the system. University City Police Department has their own transparency portal. It is on and fully visible on the public web. And what that shows is some of the usage and the policies around how the LPR system works in every individual community. So certain things that work are perfectly acceptable in Miami, Florida, might not be in Berkeley, California, but they're both Flock customers, and that's reflected on their Flock transparency portals. You can see here it shows policies, prohibited uses, allowed uses, might show agencies you share with. It might even have downloadable audits if that's something that the police department chooses, and we'll talk about audits a little bit more. Oh, apparently we'll talk about audits a little bit more here. So just to touch on audits, Flock also has, as part of our technology, unchangeable, immutable audit logs. So any search that's conducted in the system, anyone who searches for a crime, the user that conducted that search, the parameters of the search, and the time frame that the search was conducted, everything is saved in an audit log. And that's so that chief, any internal affairs, some of you, if you might wish, can actually go back and audit the program. We really encourage auditing. And we actually just released a new tool last month called Audit Assistance that automatically flags any unusual search patterns in those audits. So it's not saying that anything is wrong necessarily. That's not for the tool to dictate, but it might flag it for chief to say, hey, this is a little bit off. You may want to look at this and check out what's going on here. And chief can then go and do additional searching into that. So y'all also have audio detection here. And with other vendors, this is typically called gunshot detection. What distinguishes Flock is that our audio detection definitely does detect gunshots at a very high level of accuracy and can distinguish them from things like fireworks. But it also detects audio signatures like screeching tires, like glass breaking, that might indicate other crimes or emergencies in progress. So you'll see some of the statistics here on the page, but what I really want to flag, and I'll skip back and forth. But here, these are some of our national partnerships, and y'all are probably familiar with Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MADD. So they're one of our national partners. And one of the things that was really exciting to MADD when we first started talking to them was we were in the process of building out the audio signatures for detecting potential car accidents. And again, that doesn't say for sure a car accident happens, but it flags it in an alert for law enforcement so they can go determine, okay, maybe a car accident did happen. Do we need to marshal resources? Do we need to call EMTs? And so that was really exciting to MADD, along with some of the other technologies we've built, like wrong way driving, which is specifically designed to be able to detect situations where an impaired driver might be present. So wrong way driving actually is on our cameras on certain technologies and is able to detect if a vehicle is driving the wrong way. Typically, that's an impaired driver. So I'll skip back, just talk a little more about audio technology. Okay, here we go. So we talked about, again, gunshots, fireworks, screeching tires. So that's I live in Atlanta. I actually flew in today. We have a lot of what they call sideshows. So it's when folks get together, typically at dark, and they drive around and kind of donuts, and it can lead to adverse sort of situations where police need to get involved. And so this might detect something like that, where it would say, you know, police may need to be aware of something that's actually happening here. And so different audio signatures like that. Now, again, privacy, fundamental part of this. So it's not recording all of the time. If one of those audio signatures, like a gunshot, is detected, the sensor will record a 5-second clip, which police can then listen to. Those clips are saved, again, for short default data retention period, and they are all owned by University City Police, all local ownership of data. This talks a little bit more about kind of the combination of audio detection and license plate readers. And this touches on encryption and security. So there are a lot of rightful questions about the security of this data, right? It's sensitive data. It's data on University City residents. And Flock has an exceptionally robust security program. So we have a new CISO that we hired at the end of last year. We have an over 20-person security team internally. And then externally, we actually have on retainer the largest adversarial testing firm in the entire United States. They're called Bishop Fox. Their entire job is to conduct penetration testing of our hardware and software. So we basically pay them to look for any bugs so that they can identify that, and then we can fix it very quickly in order to not let those continue. And that's a firm that we have on retainer. They release security reporting. We actually just spoke to one of the largest cybersecurity law enforcement agencies, law enforcement bureaus in the United States as well. They're in Miami-Dade County. They're the Cybersecurity Bureau, and they conducted their own testing that they released to law enforcement agencies on the security of our technology. And they found it to be, very, again, like I said, robust security program. These are some of the security certifications that we have. So we're SOC 2 Type 2 certified. We adhere to FedRAMP principles. There's a number of ISO principles that we adhere to. And then, of course, CJIS compliance and NDAA compliance, National Defense Authorization Act. And then I really do want to touch on this because, again, back to those principles of local control of the data, we also really fundamentally believe that this program needs to be built with the local community's policies, laws, and values in mind. It is not up to us as a technology company to determine what those very different communities in Berkeley, California, and Miami, Florida decide that their policies and values are. And the residents in those communities who elected officials like yourselves to determine your laws and policies. What we do need to do is we need to enforce compliance mechanisms or provide compliance mechanisms to ensure that your community can adhere to your values with this program. So a couple of different ways that manifests are, I do want to talk about search filters because your police department has actually instituted the immigration search filter, which is optional in Missouri because there's no specific state law here that dictates it. In other states like California, it's actually automatically applied. But your agency has decided to implement that filter. What that does is it ensures that any immigration related searches that any agency that you share camera data with, those searches will never hit your cameras. If they are performed, that query will not hit your cameras, any immigration related searches, and your agency has implemented that on your cameras. We already talked about those unchangeable audit logs. We also talked about, or we didn't actually touch yet on federal data sharing. So Flock does have federal law enforcement customers. We have implemented specific controls, however, to ensure that local control remains intact. So no agency has to share with local law enforcement. That is not the default. There are two levels of sharing in which they would have to opt in. One level would be that an agency has to say, yes, I want to be discoverable by federal agencies at all. And then they would have to opt into the specific federal agency that they want to share in. University City has not elected to opt into any of that sharing. So that is, again, up to the agency, not up to Flock. That is not our decision. And then all federal agencies are blocked from ever entering any statewide networks or our national network. So that is for the principles of local control. We touched on some of our national partners, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children maintains that Amber Alert list. They are a national partner. And then we've been officially endorsed by the historic chapter of the NAACP of Oakland. This is a quote from them talking about unbiased policing. Again, this is objective evidence. It's pictures of license plates and vehicle details. It is not subject to the inherent human bias that affects all of us. I know there's attorneys on this council. I am not an attorney. So what I will say about this is that there have been no court cases at the federal or state level that have not been overturned that have been upheld that say that LPR images count as a search under the Fourth Amendment. You do not need a warrant to access license plate reader images. They are distinct from something like cell phone data, a cell phone data dump, or a GPS tracker in that regard, because they are single images at a point in time of a vehicle in the plain view on a public road. And then I have several cases in here. We work with over 200 agencies in the state of Missouri. Here are some agencies around you and some examples of cases where this technology has helped. I'm not going to dive too deep into these because I know y'all see these in the news, finding missing children, helping with homicide suspects, homicide cases. I actually just want to open up the floor to questions now.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Teeman.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. I think the community is aware that I am the member who, along with my honorable colleagues, along with their consent and their help, brought this before the council. I believe my colleagues have many questions. I have some backup questions should there be time and necessity, but let me simply and briefly say this. I honor our police and our staff. I also honor the presenters from Flock for their sincerity. But I oppose any further dealings with Flock safety. We know what could happen, and that is the whole point. My singular focus has been to protect our neighbors who are immigrants. If we have further relations with Flock, our data, in fact, our town could be used to further some of the most immoral immigration policies in our lifetime. We know this can happen. We know it. It is sufficient to understand that this is a possibility. I am no philosopher or theologian, and forgive me if I'm being a preacher, but this sufficiency feels very much like a moral imperative. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, and I'll have backup questions should my colleagues, if there is time.
Thank you very much. To the other members of council, do you have questions of Flock and the presenters? Councilmember Brenner.
Thank you, Mayor. So there's a well-documented case in the fall where Flock had previously been saying that there was not cooperation with ICE, but then it was found that there was a pilot program and that some of the cities were not aware that their data was being shared. Can you explain what happened and all that?
Definitely, yeah. So level set, we have no contracts with ICE. There was a pilot program with Homeland Security investigations that is under the Department of Homeland Security. It was for about 4 months. It was for the purpose of human trafficking and narcotics trafficking. And it was in early 2025. And at that time, we talked about the federal agencies being a distinct category and unable to enter any statewide or national networks. That enforcement was not built within the system yet. So those pilot agents, that pilot agency had actually been on the national network. And other agencies, local agencies, are also on the national network. University City Police Department is actually not on the national network, but other agencies were. And at that time, federal agencies were allowed to be in the national network. We very quickly heard concern from local communities. It is a valid concern. And we built an entire trust and compliance team. I work hand in hand with them. There's 24 people, engineers, product folks, public affairs folks like myself, government affairs folks, attorneys, working on that team in order to roll out both internal policies, but also products to ensure that something like that does not happen again. And those federal changes were one of the first changes we made.
Councilmember McMahon.
Thank you for your presentation and for being able to come here today. I just had a question. Of the 2,800 crimes that Flock solves on a daily basis or helps to do that, what's the breakdown between serious violent crime and property crimes?
That's actually, I don't have the answer to that question. I can ask my data team and try to get back to you. I don't know. I do know we did an analysis based on a customer survey, and we actually just released the results last week, and I would have updated the slides. But that analysis showed that over 10,000 missing persons have been found in the history of the company with the help of Flock. So that's over 8 years. That's across the spectrum. So it could be Amber Alerts. It also could be missing senior citizens. So almost every state has a Silver Alert list. And it could be victims of domestic violence, or there's kind of a broad spectrum of missing persons, but it's over 10,000.
And then the 10% crime in the U.S. solved using Flock in some capacity. There's an asterisk there and it talks about this is a study that was done with TCU, but it's using customer data that's shared. So you use customer data to create brochures to sell your product. Would our data be used in that capacity as well?
That was actually based on reported crime data. So within the product, there's something called insights, where, for example, let's say that hit and run is solved with the use of Flock Safety. You can actually put in things like case notes. Or in some cases, we asked agencies for their actual crime reporting, right? So their case systems. It's not things like sensitive customer data that we're using for that. It's actual crime outcomes.
And then you talked about how using the license plate reader isn't a search as we would look at it under the Fourth Amendment, that someone's out in public, it's captured in time. So if you're served with a subpoena, there wouldn't be any issue with responding to that subpoena because it's not a search.
So we do get subpoenas and we direct them back to the customer. It definitely happens. It is your data, so it actually isn't ours to release in a subpoena.
And what's the time frame for letting us know that a subpoena has been served? And could you be served with a subpoena that tells you that you can't, you're not even allowed to tell us about it? I mean, that happens in some cases.
Time frame, I've heard this question before. Yeah, time frame depends on the law of the state and the specific subpoena, but we would alert you in plenty of time. We would direct that to likely your city attorney, who I met before this. And then the second case that you talked about, it's never happened in the history of the company. So we've been around 8-9 years now. It's never happened. That is also true of any company that you work with. That is a legal system. It has never happened.
Is Flock lobbying any state or federal government to ensure that they're not attempting to pass laws that would require local municipalities to provide this data? Because you're telling us that you want to make sure that have local control,
Mhm.
but if a state or the federal government were to pass a law that would say, guess what? Now, if you use this system, you have to share it with us. Are you
We are not
lobbying
engaged in any lobbying around that. We do
You're
engage,
not doing any lobbying around that.
not around that issue. No, absolutely not. We are not.
So
We do engage in regulatory efforts in order to help states understand how LPR works. So a law just got passed in Washington that statewide they cannot use the technology for immigration. We support those kinds of regulation. We're good with regulation, but we're not engaged in any lobbying around that.
Because my fear is that you have somebody that might deem a community not supporting their efforts in certain regards, and they want to take action that's almost retribution to find out, to put pressure on a community to do things voluntarily that would otherwise they might not do. And we see that when we have folks in government that are proposing cuts in, let's say, services to airports because they are a sanctuary city. But you don't see that as an issue that you need to, as having control of some data for some period of time. That's not something you should be pressing upon other governmental entities to say, don't do that.
Absolutely not. In every state that has implemented laws about local control of the data, we've actually hard coded specific guardrails into the system. So I mentioned Washington. The state of Washington just passed a law 6 weeks ago. I think the governor signed it, and it prohibits Washington agencies from using LPR data for immigration enforcement. We put that search filter automatically, applied it across the state. In California, there's a law that prohibits any out-of-state sharing. Automatically within the state, they're disallowed from any federal sharing, from any out-of-state and federal sharing, actually, in California. In the state of Virginia, they passed a statewide 21-day retention period for data, which most states don't have a data retention period. Automatically in Virginia, every Flock customer data deleted after 21 days. We want regulation so that it's really clear how we can help agencies operate in a state. It's actually better for us.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fuller.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Thank you for doing this. I don't know really how to ask this question, so excuse me if I fumble a bit. I come from a history, I'm an old spook from the Army. And I am just absolutely paranoid about this idea that the data gets dumped after 90 days. In my realm, in the university, when we collect data, we put it on a computer, it's out there. And I'm really nervous about this. And I want the best tools for our police department. And I've done multiple discussions with the chief, the assistant chief, and I really know they want to use this as a tool. And our last community survey proved that they know how to use their tools because our crime is down in this city. However, I am very nervous with this idea that once the data is out there, it's out there. And I'm wanting to know how we can guarantee you're saying, yeah, well, we own our own data, but there are multiple instances, and I know a lot of this is on social media, but a lot of this is out in the news media as well, that this data has been breached. And we all have been hacked on our computers. What guarantees do we have that this data is literally as secure as you're saying it is? And I know that's a terrible question, but
No. It's actually a totally fair question that we have gotten many times. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a really high level, because just like I'm not a lawyer, I'm also not a cybersecurity engineer. But I'd like to get your email after this. And because we've been asked this question so many times, I'm going to send you documentation that we have from our cloud server provider on precisely how that data deletion and purge process happens, because we have gotten the question before and we have documentation on it. What I can tell you at a very high level is images, when they're taken, are assigned what's called a time to live. And it's whatever the data period is. Let's say it's 30 days. It's exactly 30 days to the second that it is coded into that system. That is when the data is purged. So it is hard deleted after that data deletion period. It is encrypted the entire time from when it is on the device to in transit to stored in the cloud, fully encrypted. Again, it's we're CJIS compliant, Criminal Justice Information Systems. So that's kind of the highest level of encryption the data has to be stored at. But I want to send you this documentation because I can't explain it as well as it does. And it's a fair question.
if I may, send it to our city attorney.
You got it.
There we go. I think all of us need that.
Tell me
I
where
don't
to send it.
personally-
Tell me where to send it.
Councilmember Brenner.
Okay, I want to follow up on that question, and I have my original question. The follow-up on that is, there's got to be a way that if they're doing an investigation, they save the data. So it is possible to save the data, no?
So not after 30 days. So if police are doing an investigation, let's say they search for the one image, that white Jeep. So they can download that image, right? And then it's in your police department's evidence management system, whatever they use. There's evidence.com, there's different evidence management systems. That's not within Flock anymore. Then it's in your police department system. If that image was never downloaded, if it's only being stored by a Flock, if there is an investigation after 30 days, they unfortunately cannot find it. Does that make sense?
Yes, but they could have it still on if they.
They,
download it.
yes, that would be the same as any evidence that your police department has. So,
it makes
you know,
sense. I just wanna make
an
sure.
officer takes a photo with their camera and they store it in the evidence management system.
So the second question I have is cooperating agencies.
Mhm.
So let's say UCity's cooperating with Clayton,
Mhm.
our neighbor. How much, like, how does Clayton get our data?
Yeah.
Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And what are the safeguards within that?
Good question. So, first of all, sharing one-to-one sharing like that, Clayton to University City, it doesn't have to be reciprocal. So Clayton could share their camera access with University City, and University City doesn't have to share back. In that case, where Clayton is sharing access with University City, let's say University City chief knows that that hit and run, that same suspect, I'm just going to keep using the same metaphor, they crossed over into Clayton. They can conduct a search in the system and they can say, I'm looking for this white Jeep with a roof rack, and they can search any network that they have access to. So they could search a network being a network of cameras. So they can search University City Police Department's network of cameras, and they can choose to search Clayton's network of cameras for that white Jeep. If it passed a camera in Clayton, they would be able to see that image. They can also, if they choose to, reciprocally share back so that Clayton could do the same thing if that vehicle passed. They don't have to. It doesn't have to be reciprocal. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Mayor.
Other questions from members of council? My only one is I'll just sit here and be just slightly skeptical that I do appreciate your presentation. It's been very almost calming and soothing. Yet at the same point in time, there seems to be a disconnect between what you say and what the mainstream media seems to say, too many of us, about the product. So I realize that you can't necessarily address all of those items, but it really is one of those things where I understand what you're saying, but we also get the sense from what we have read that raises our level of concern about the product and the safety of the information.
Yeah, I hear you. This isn't a direct question, but I do hear this a lot. I think we are in a time right now where a lot of folks, yellow flags are rightfully raised. There's a lot of questions about how local control can happen, how security systems can be made safe to ensure that local communities can actually adhere to their values. I will say in states that have imposed statewide regulation, like a Washington, it's actually provides some guardrails. So we saw a lot of agencies, you can see this in all of the Washington news, state of Washington. A lot of agencies late last year, earlier this year, actually paused their cameras in Washington because there wasn't regulation. And now that regulation has been implemented, we actually saw 2 agencies last week turn those cameras back on because they understand the guardrails now. There's regulation. That being said, the way that we've built the system is all of that can be implemented at the local level. All of those policies can be implemented at the local level. And so I do think that's important to understand.
Thank you. Ms. Dancy.
Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about the controls around your unusual search patterns? Is that a immediate notification? I read that there are a few bad players that were using the system. How quickly can one find out that that's happening?
Yeah, so the way the tool's called Audit Assistance, it's not a push notification, so it's not like chief wouldn't get a pop-up on his phone, but within the audit report, it's actually a flag, and I can send you a screenshot of what it looks like, or have chief send it to you. But within the audit tool, it would actually say like, right here, unusual pattern detected, and in the regular audit, they could actually then go kind of investigate what's going on there.
Is that a follow-up to that? Is that based on how often the chief decides to look at it, or is it?
It would be based on your department's audit policy. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So different in every
But
community.
nothing immediate, no emails to say, hey,
It's
you
not
should look
right
at-
now. It's not a push notification. Again, I want to caveat, we rolled out this tool last month. And we've actually already heard a lot of really positive feedback. Agencies are saying like, we are really happy you rolled this out. So I never say never. Maybe in the future, a push notification might be enabled, but right now it's not a push notification.
And one more question I just thought of. I want to be clear that this isn't, you can download a file, but it isn't, I put in my email address and you're emailing something to anyone in terms of the data itself.
Oh, no. I
Right.
mean, the police department would download it and it would be subject to their evidence management policy, which is typically dictated by state law.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, nobody can log into University City Police Department's Flock system without a University City Police Department email address. So they can't just make you an account in the system with your Gmail.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. I want to thank you for your presentation. I'm not sure if this is a question for you. It may be for the city manager and or our chief. And that is simply a lot of things that I'm hearing from residents is that their questions aren't being answered. Is there an access that they can have with customer service, either with our police department or with City Hall, that can address customers' concerned and give them a hotline and access to asking their questions that they may come up with? Because this is going to continue, if you understand what I'm saying. So.
Honorable Mayor Crowe, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, yes, I do understand. I was actually made aware today. I received a comment where someone mentioned that I would ask Chief Hampton to step up to provide an explanation as to why that information was not available via Sunshine request. And this was the gentleman that it requested. There was a Sunshine request for, I think, some of the information on the LPRs.
Okay. I think I can address that. I've been working with John Mulligan, myself, and Captain Brian Eisenberg. One rule of our MOU with Flock is it can only be criminal searches only. So specifically for me to even try to check my own license plate, I don't have a criminal investigative reason to check a license plate. That has to be documented and put in. So when we're getting data, one, we do not have the tool already created actually to say that we run ABC 1, 2, 3 for how many 30 days. That's not a log or a document that we would have on hand. So that's something that would basically have to be created. Secondly, you're also talking about a non-criminal matter. That's a exploratory search that is out of compliance. It's not only out of compliance with our procedures, out of compliance with Flock's procedures, it's actually out of compliance with CJIS procedures. Similar with Regis. I can't run my pool guy maintenance name and information just based off of my suspicion specifically that person is not a right person or not a good person, or he's a bad actor. He or she is a bad actor. So those are some of the things that I want to bring up, and expounding on this technology is done wonders for us. I mean, we're talking murder investigations, the unfortunate tragic incident on Delmar with the couple from Clayton or Brentwood, specifically this technology helped solve that homicide. Those were serial killers actually helped being brought to justice by way of this technology. The technology works comparative to other platforms because it's so expansive, it's so inexpensive, it's so expansive within the communities that we have corporate partners utilizing this technology. We have corporate partners investing in this technology, and understanding the collaborative efforts of those good corporate stakeholders. That is what brings this expansive network to say, okay, this is what we're doing for. So no one can go in and say, I'm searching a person just because they're my neighbor or the kid up the street or what the case is. That's never the case. And those auditing and those protocols and those safeguards are already in place, been in place. Started with a very small investment of this, and possibly approximately 2019, got improved into 2021 to gunshot detection, audio detection of that aspect, incorporated with the LPR. So it's not just joyriding, shooting off guns or whatever the case is, and around we're very centrally located to say, okay, that didn't occur in University City, that occurred in Veneta Park, that occurred in Wellston, that occurred in St. Louis City, that occurred in Pagedale. That's the expansive nature of what we have right now in place. And what we're trying to do is harden our commercial areas, our commercial districts. These are not even in residential areas. What's so attractive about this technology is the fact that it's solar power. You have many of the competitors that are still competing to try to get to that solar power and that type of technology upgrade comparative to go ask Ameren for a tap in with that power source. And that's not something that Ameren is even interested in doing. So I hope that answers your question.
Councilmember Smotherson.
And just one other part of that, and I do appreciate your explanation. But other than filing a subpoena, I mean, other than filing a sunshine request, is there just a general access that residents can call and ask questions about flock cameras, about the flock technology? And there are just general questions
Yes.
that we don't, I mean, I'm not asking them to have to, file a sunshine request,
Right.
but just an access point where residents can just call in
No,
and get information about what's happening with our technology.
we can field those questions, those Q&As all day long within the police department. We can take that just as we would any other question or complaint policy. And all of my commanders, all of my supervisors are very well versed on this technology. And I guarantee you, we can facilitate that, even if that's an upgrading of our current website to make sure that that question is being answered directly. One thing we would like to verify is that we're actually answering that question for our residents or business owners or stakeholders. Answering that question for somebody in Seattle, Washington, answering that question for somebody in Oregon. I mean, you're taking valuable investigative time, supervisory time away for just movements that are meant to log you off. Keep you as a keyboard warrior as opposed to being more conducive to the community. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Teeman.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Thank you, sir.
This for me?
Okay, I'm going to address my questions to the young lady. Many of the questions, the following questions come from constituents.
Yeah.
So I feel a certain obligation to pass these along. But let me also say ahead of time that every question I'm about to ask is grounded in at least 2 or more journalistic sources. So I backed up these questions, if you will. Where I have only one source, I'll actually say that. So first, the Dayton, Ohio Police Department just recently, within days, suspended its entire flock program because of network sharing that allowed outside law enforcement agencies in October of 2025 to run 7,100 unauthorized searches for immigrant-related purposes. They did this despite the explicit policy of the City Council of Dayton. Can your system be turned into a tool for deportation without a city's knowledge?
You're talking about Dayton, right?
Dayton. Mhm.
So Dayton, I just spoke with the folks in Dayton last week. Dayton Police Department and Dayton Fire Department both use flock safety. Dayton Police Department uses license plate readers, and Dayton Fire Department uses drones as a first responder. That is a technology that we provide that you do not have here in University City. You also can't conduct searches on drones as a first responder. There's no searching for an LPR on a drone, right? It's for real-time information systems. The 2 systems, the fire department and the police department system, were both actually on the same system at that point in October. They were until I think January of this year. And so Dayton Police Department has affirmed, and we have seen their audits from their police department, they have the immigration search filter turned on. The fire department, because they only have drones and you can't do an LPR search on a drone, does not have any of the filters turned on because, again, the searches can never hit the drone cameras. Those 2 departments were in the system as the same name. And so the audits at that time returned the searches from the fire department systems. They did not hit the police department's cameras. And there are also journalistic sources backing that up, and I can send them
But
to
you're
you.
not denying that 7,100 immigrant-related the searches happened, and then these were unauthorized.
No, they did not hit Dayton Police Department's cameras.
But they did happen.
Immigration related searches are perfectly within the law of states like Florida and Tennessee and other states. They did not hit Dayton's cameras. So no unauthorized searches hit Dayton's cameras. I am denying that.
Okay. The last point you made here is about St. Charles, our neighbor. How does their 287 G agreement relate to their use of Flock equipment and also relate to any data we may share with them?
Their search, if you share data with them or they share data with you, again, that doesn't have to be reciprocal. So if you don't want them to ever access your data, just don't share with them. You don't have to share with any agencies. That being said, any agency searches that hit your camera, if the immigration related search is in place in University City, which we know that it is, those searches will never hit your cameras. So the 287G agreement on immigration will never affect University City's cameras.
Okay. You recently expanded your platform to plug into commercial data brokers for people lookup services, advertising that police can now, and I quote you, jump from LPR data to a person. You promised that license plates were not, again, I quote you, personally identifiable information. Could you please explain how this new feature is not a comprehensive tracking infrastructure?
It's a platform called Nova, which is a separate product, just like the drones as first responders, that is not part of what University City Police Department's LPR system has. That is a separate product. That is like conflating an Apple Watch ability with an Apple phone.
Okay. The mosaic effect often comes up in the things I've read. The idea that tracking a vehicle isn't just about a car, but about mapping a human life.
Mhm.
Are there deeply intimate details that can be inferred about our residents simply analyzing their travel patterns?
No, in over 30 courts at the federal and appellate levels, most recently a court in Washington State and a court in Norfolk, Virginia, explicitly ruled that LPRs, fixed LPR images, which are images of license plates, issued to individuals for the purposes of public safety in the plain view are not qualified as a search under the Fourth Amendment. A court has never ruled that fixed LPR images constitute a search under the Fourth Amendment and has not been overturned. There was one court in Virginia, that court was overturned.
Thank you. A comprehensive analysis by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, this is my sole source on this one, alleges that law enforcement agencies use Track's nationwide network to run hundreds of searches on political demonstrators. It specifically targeted organizers of the No Kings and animal rights protests. Why should this council fund a technology that is actively being weaponized to chill residents who go to their First Amendment rights?
Many technologies are used for many things that is within local control and your police department's policy in order to ensure that this technology is used within the values of your community. In addition, we've instituted specific flags within our system to ensure that First Amendment activity is protected and any searches that infringe on First Amendment rights. For example, you can't search for bumper sticker with XYZ political candidate. That is not possible within our system. Any searches that would infringe on First Amendment rights are actually flagged and blocked.
Are you saying this didn't happen?
I'm not. I'm saying that that would be up to that agency in order to enforce their policy. I do not know if that happened. I have no ability to know that, but that would be a locally decided thing, just like misuse of the system. In the very rare cases that it happens, are up to the individual agency to actually police. That's why we offer tools like audit assistance, like immutable audit records in order to ensure that it can be caught and appropriately dealt with.
Well, speaking of those kinds of things, the ALPR cameras are overwhelmingly deployed in low-income neighborhoods and communities of color under the guise of data-driven policing. In our case, most of our cameras right now are in our third ward. This, to me, sounds awfully like using technology to automate systemic racial profiling.
Yeah, like I mentioned, one of our partners nationally is the NAACP, specifically because of a couple of reasons. Crime disproportionately hurts lower income communities. One of the cities with every single Flock product or almost every single Flock product is Greenville, Mississippi. The mayor in Greenville, Mississippi actually got an award from the state for being able to reduce some of the crime that was plaguing their community. They were in national news articles because they had to institute a citywide curfew before they got this technology because of the violent crime there. And he has he's put this technology in place and is now literally being honored by the state for helping reduce crime in that community. In addition, I would point to the fact that this technology, it's objective. This is objective evidence. It's an image of a license plate and vehicle details. That's what the NAACP was talking about in their quote.
Just to be clear, that's the NAACP in Oakland, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
In Oakland per se, not nationally.
Yes, the NAACP in Oakland, but we work with NAACPs in other places as
Yeah,
well.
but it's you quote it like it's the whole nation's NAACP.
I apologize. It is the NAACP in Oakland. Yes.
Oh, I feel for you. I apologize for putting you on the spot like this. I mean,
It's really okay.
You're a very nice person.
It's really okay.
But as long as that made you terribly uncomfortable, I'll ask you one last question.
It's okay. This is my job.
Just last month, a Colorado man was repeatedly pulled over at gunpoint at times because Flock camera error linked his license plate to a warrant that just simply didn't exist. He was unable to get his vehicle removed from the Flock hot list, this hot list that you speak of. This is just one of a number of cases where people with no criminal record whatsoever got mistakenly targeted. What immediate remedy do you offer to our citizens whose lives are put at high risk situations, perhaps because your system misreads a character or even misidentifies a license plate?
Yeah. So first, just to level set, it's not a Flock hot list, right? These are, like we talked about, these are hot lists maintained by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The NCIC is a national database. So we would have no ability to remove that or not remove that. We also know that technology is not infallible. Neither, by the way, are people. There are a lot of wrongful police stops by humans, and policy dictates what happens in that case. Our best practices suggestion, and I'm sure written within most police departments' policies around Flock, are that you always will double and triple check that the image that you get, the alert that a law enforcement officer gets, actually matches up with the vehicle that they're looking at and is accurately on that hot list. That is always best practice policy. Technology is never infallible. Again, neither are people. That's why you double check both.
I thank you for your patience with us, with me in particular. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much to all. Oh, I'm sorry,
I
Councilman.
just have one short question. So just to follow up on the 7,100
Immigration.
potential searches. So it was much like a police officer coming to my home and knocking on the door, but I don't open the door, so there's no search.
Yeah, similarly. So
my question then is some other governmental entity was knocking on the door, wanting that data 7,000 times, but luckily they didn't get to it.
Not luckily because of the search filter, because intentionally they did not get to it.
It doesn't stop the search.
No, because in some states, that is a perfectly legal and acceptable search. Flock is a private technology company. We cannot decide the state law of Florida, the state law of Tennessee, the state law of California.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying somewhere out there, that means that there's somebody that really wanted Dayton's data.
No. That's not what it means. They queried those searches of potentially all of the networks that they share with. They could potentially be in the national network, which again, your police department is not in. And that is a sharing network in which they might have queried all of the agencies that are in that national network. I'm not sure if yes or no Dayton is in that national network, but it does not mean they were specifically targeting Dayton. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much. To all the citizens who are here and then those who are watching online, there is no vote on anything coming up tonight. If you have requests to speak, you're welcome to speak at our regular session, which will begin in just a minute. However, there's no vote coming up, so your comments may be more appropriate for if there is a vote that comes up, and you'll have notice on the agenda at that time as well, just so you know, and for those watching as well. I believe that concludes our study session for the evening, and we will start our council meeting in just a couple of minutes. The study session is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming this evening.